What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Apollo Art Analysis. This episode, we're going to be taking a look at a piece by the career 3D artist known as Jared Pike. This episode, we're going to talk a little bit about the liminal or the dream pool. We're going to talk about the deceivingly real medium of the digital rendering, and then we're also going to talk about the very scary sounds of the shepherd's tone. So let's jump right into it. So whenever you first see this work, you're met with 6 individual scenes throughout this whole video. So this is a motion picture piece, so it kind of brings you through each individual scene as it progresses through its ending there. So those scenes include the kind of railed hallway here, includes the flooded stairwell. It also includes what I call the ladder pits. It also includes a kind of reflective room, also a flooded one as well. And then the second to last, so the 5th one is going to be the flooded stairwell, kind of like a descending perspective of that. And finally, I called these kind of the multi-layered balconies. So these are the 6 individual scenes that you see throughout the motion picture piece. And so, let's see. Does it want to work? Let's see. Oh, wow. That is frustrating. All right, so next I want to talk about the fact that these places go by many names to many different people. So some people call these the pools, some people call these liminal spaces, some people call these the dream pools by Pike series, some people call these kind of the Dreamcore aesthetic, and then some people call these the back rooms. So like I said, these have a ton of different names, so people really refer to them as multiple different things. So I think that's really important to know. You might see some people call this one thing, another person calls it another, and you might call it something completely different. But what's important to note is that we're all on the same page. We're looking at the same thing, regardless of what we call it. So yeah, it goes by many names to many different people. And with that in mind, what do you guys call these spaces? I call it kind of a liminal pool, depending on what we see. Sometimes it's much more of a liminal space. Sometimes it's much more of a Dreamcore. But what do you guys see whenever you look at that? What do you guys refer to these as? I'm really curious. So we are looking at, of course, a pool. So from Pike's Dream Pool series, and he created these. Really seems like he's trying to add some life to these individual scenes, really make us feel like they could be some real places. We'll talk about that a bit later. So with this in mind, the liminal space by definition is a space of transition. So hallways, stairwells, ladders, those are all spaces of transition. So a liminal space is a space of transition. So if you see that, you can normally identify that. And then the Dreamcore aesthetic, it's normally attributed to a bunch of different things, primarily kind of an hazy aesthetic, a surreal scene, or something that seems kind of abnormal. So not necessarily Dreamcore, but it could be applied here. Of course, we have the flooded stairwell that looks like it keeps going. Definitely feels a little surreal, and it's hard to put your finger on. I would say the most surreal scene that I see is going to be the 6th scene that we see. It's very, very interesting. It's so sterile. There's, nothing along the walls. It feels surreal. That's closest I could probably get to Dreamcore in that definition. And so, this is from Jared Pike. Pike created the first piece of the Dream Pool series, and the Dream Pools really go on to see an immense influence. You have all these 3D artists, so all of these digital rendering artists trying to recreate Pike's Dream Pool. We see that mix of those really sterile walls mixed with a kind of turquoise type of coloring. I'll bring in a piece here in a second. We can reference that. And so when we break this clip down and try and find some influences or some insights, we want to look at some of the first pieces of the Dream Pool series. So Jared Pike really created that Dream Pool series. The first work isn't quite insightful, but Dream Pool 02 is the first work that really sets the tone for the rest of the series. So we certainly see that here. We see that kind of minimalist grid here, very sterile. We see that here, of course, and then we also see that really striking turquoise colored water. And here is a much more later work, but this is still a very popular one, and it sure also proves that style as well. Of course, you have that turquoise water, that really clean grid backing, of course, a bit of sunlight as well. So all of those are really insightful to reference to try and see where this aesthetic came from and what Jared Pike is really doing here. And so there's no doubt that this feels very nostalgic to a lot of people. Some people refer to these pools as very nostalgic. Some people see even the tiling as nostalgic as well. We're probably associating with some of those places places that we visited, say as a teen or as a kid, or even just as a earlier time in our life. So there is definitely a sense of nostalgia that could be rooted from that. And with that in mind, a lot of people also say that they see these scenes in some of their deepest of dreams. So I think that's also really interesting. The dream world absolutely fascinates me, so I think that's also important to note. And this piece is quite cinematic. We have this kind of hovering, this pan zoom effect. It is kind of like a depth of field illusion that you see throughout each individual piece here. It gives that a bit of an unsettling visual, and that is also paired alongside a shepherd's tone. We'll talk about that here in a second. So this was created in the digital rendering medium of expression. So a rendering is essentially kind of digital sculpting and then assembling those into an environment to take a picture of, but you see he actually kind of animates the water as well, and then he has the perspective of the camera moving through each one of these individual scenes. So it's very cinematic and it's very immersive. It really brings you right in. And then of course that is also set alongside a shepherd's tone going throughout the whole thing. And if you don't know what a shepherd's tone is, you might have heard it before, but you haven't, put it to words or know that it is a shepherd's tone. But it is essentially a tone that sounds like it's forever ascending or forever descending. So it can feel very, very suspenseful, very unsettling. I believe it was created in the 1960s, if I'm correct, not 100% sure. But there's no doubt that the shepherd's tone really adds this kind of unsettling, this very suspenseful element to the work at hand. And it's almost as if we get this sense that we're rising towards a climax or this dangerous destination. So there's also this sense that we're kind of especially on this one, it feels like we're kind of endlessly falling through whatever space or destination this is. So, almost choked. So whenever you put that alongside a shepherd's tone, that's really important because we're kind of falling through this space, but the shepherd's tone is also falling with us. So there's this sense of suspense building throughout the work, and it never ceases. It shows 6 individual scenes, each with about 7 seconds of screen time, and it's just an amazing work for sure. And so with that in mind, we really see these kind of unsettling simulations that we can do, of course, with the digital rendering and then mixing it with something like an unsettling shepherd's tone. Really creates a very cinematic and a very unsettling, kind of a subtle horror visual type of experience. So really, really nice work. I wanted to just show you guys each individual scene here. That's why I got this massive setup. But yeah, it was just an amazing piece. I love Jared Pike's art. I think he will have a lot of influence and a major reference point for generations to come, especially in this kind of liminal space, liminal Dreamcore, and of course a 3D rendering medium as a whole. So hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys enjoyed, go check out the original video and the original artist Jared Pike. He's doing some really good stuff. Talked a little bit about this liminal Dreamcore, this kind of Dreamcore aesthetic. We talked about the shepherd's tone, and we talked about suspense and kind of cinematic qualities of that, as well as the deceivingly real medium of the digital rendering. Some people really believe that these might be real places, so it's kind of deceiving in that quality. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Go check out the original artist. My name is Apollo. This was Apollo Art Analysis, and I'll see you guys on the next episode. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you'd like to support our work directly, please check out our Apollo community tokens. Apollo Art Exchange is an ecosystem of art appreciation which elevates artists each and every day. Thanks for listening.